Ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe to this channel right now. What did I tell you, ladies and gentlemen? I said that Trump is going to get record-breaking donations in terms of fundraising. He has $52 plus million since he was convicted. Everyone knows it was an absurd theatrical performance. Hit subscribe right now. We'll explain why it was not a crime. Bradley Martin and also Hans A. von Spakovsky. These are two FEC chairmen, ladies and gentlemen, who stated it was not a crime. The payment, even if he had told Michael Cohen to pay Stormy, even if he had told Michael Cohen himself, even if he paid Stormy himself, Paul Bartlett, thank you. To my super chat, thank you. It would not have been a crime under FEC laws. That's according to Hans A. von Spakovsky and the FEC chairman, Martin. Anyway, hit subscribe to this channel. This is Trump right now, and then we'll get to the legal aspect with legal scholars. You'll hear President Trump. You will hear Paul Bartlett. Thank you again. You will hear a whole bunch of people. Hit subscribe right now.
By a lot. Because this was very old. They could have brought this 7 years ago instead of bringing it right in the middle of the election. So they missed the statute of limitations. They did everything. Now, let me give you the good news. The good news is, last night, we just got a report this morning, in the history of politics, I believe, maybe I'm wrong, somebody will find that I'm wrong, maybe, but I don't think so. They raised with small money donors, meaning like $21, $42, $53, $38, a record $39 million in about a 10-hour period. No, think of that. I like those people. Because so far, I guess it's backfiring. Now, I don't know. I'd rather not have it happen. I don't want to have it backfiring. I don't want to win this thing legitimately, not because they were stupid and did things that they shouldn't be doing. They shouldn't have brought this case. They were saying it this morning. This is a case that should not have been brought.
Sorry about that. FEC chairman Bradley Smith, and Hans A. von Spakovsky. The FEC did not fine Trump. The FEC fined Clinton and the DNC for purchasing the Steele dossier. The record-keeping violation was elevated because of an imaginary, invisible federal crime. The DOJ, the Department of Justice, for 3 years did not level this. They tried everything else with Trump throughout the country. They did not level this against Trump because they knew that it wouldn't hold up in a federal court. They knew in a federal court they would have to have Bradley Smith or Hans A. von Spakovsky or any of the former FEC chairmen who didn't think that this was a crime. So they had to try this in a state court, which will be appealed by the New York Appeals Court. Okay, this is not rocket science. But before we get to Trump, I want to get to his attorney, who says they're going to appeal this, and he will. It's obviously going to be overturned. The whole thing is ludicrous. It was not a crime. What Clinton did with private servers, and I think Hillary Clinton will replace Biden. I just do. And I'm just going to keep saying it. And what Biden did with classified data, they didn't have, these were crimes. And Hunter's laptop, there are crimes, according to the New York Post and Daily Mail. Those people should get Pulitzer Prizes. Hit subscribe to this channel. This is Trump's attorney. He's awesome.
Todd Blanche is here now. Did your client get a fair trial?
I mean, no, I don't think so. I mean, we've been saying for over a year that we couldn't get a fair trial in Manhattan. We couldn't get a fair trial with the judge. And and it played out in lots of ways exactly as we expected.
Was this judge fair? Did he follow the rule of law?
Look, I'm not going to criticize the judge right now. I think that there were a lot of decisions that he made leading up to the trial, which really hurt us at trial, that we very much disagree with. They're part of the public record. Everything from him not recusing himself to the decisions he made during the omnibus motion process, the motion in limine process. And what happens in a trial is you show up for trial, and all those decisions that have been made in the weeks and months leading up to trial, they matter. The evidence that can come in, the evidence that cannot come in. And when we showed up at trial, that's where we really felt that we weren't getting a fair shake.
You believe the judge should have recused?
Look, we filed 2 separate motions saying that the judge should have recused himself. He didn't. It's something that we went to the first department to appeal it before the trial started. I expect that'll be one of the things that we appeal.
So you believe this judge was biased because of his donations and because of his family financial interest in the outcome of this case?
Look, our system of justice requires not only the that a judge that is actually biased to recuse himself, but that a judge that even has the appearance of bias to recuse himself. And our papers are public. We felt very strongly that there was an actual bias that this judge had. And even if not an actual bias, that there was certainly a perception of bias. He disagreed. He's a judge, and in our system, he gets to make that decision, and it's something that we get to appeal, but we certainly felt pretty strongly about our position.
You believe Donald Trump's constitutional rights were violated?
In many ways, yes.
How so?
Well, if you look at, for example, the gag order that was put in place, and you had a situation where President Trump, who's on the campaign trail and is trying to compete with voices that are saying things every day that he cannot respond to without the risk of being fined, which he was, or going to prison for violating it. That affects not only President Trump, that affects every voter, whether they're going to vote for President Trump or against President Trump. That affects every single voter in this country because they don't get to hear from the candidate. We very much disagree with that order. We appealed that.
So Trump could not speak. There was a gag order against him, but Stormy, she could speak. Michael Cohen was routinely insulting Trump. And so what about Trump's safety? You know, Democrats and media, they say, oh, Trump's going to make people unsafe with his words. What about Michael Cohen? And Stormy and others? The vitriol, the venom, the insults. So it's okay to put Trump's life at risk. That's okay according to Democrats, according to the court. I mean, how does that even work? You're going to allow the witnesses to disparage Trump, but you're not going to allow Trump to get a word in because you're so frightened that he could put people in harm's way, but you're not frightened that he could be in harm's way with all the vitriol leveled at him. I mean, the civility, the sensibilities of the morally superior, highly educated liberal Democrats are just infused with hypocrisy and vitriol and venom. They want, the only thing they truly want is not democracy. It's not equity, it's political power. That's all they care about. That's why a unanimous Supreme Court decision overturned the Colorado ban. And we can give you a whole bunch of examples of how they were humiliated in courts of laws. I mean, they're going to have a defeat, a monumental defeat with immunity, which is actually going to strengthen Trump during his next term in office. By the way, there's nothing they can do to stop Trump. Trump's going to win. They can indict him and put him, God forbid, in Rikers. They're not going to do that, but they could put him in his own level in a jail because he'd have Secret Service and he'd have, he'd have protection. Obviously, he would not be surrounded by any inmate, but it's probably just going to be house arrest in Mar-a-Lago. And still they'd lose. And then I think the Supreme Court has to get involved because you're preventing a federal candidate, a national candidate for president, to campaign. So if they can expedite the New York Court of Appeals, that takes 1-2 years or so. That's also a victory, because the New York Court of Appeals just overturned a Hollywood producer for heinous crimes, his conviction. And so they should look at this even before November 5th. That's what they should do.
As well, there was a lot about what happened over the past year that, I sit here tonight, the verdict just came down today, but really there's a lot that's happened over the past year that I think that Americans should look very hard at. Just the whole way this case was charged. The district attorney says that this type of case is a bread and butter, that they do these cases all the time. That is not true. It's just not true. This is a case that the records of President Trump's personal records, his personal checkbook from 2017, is what he was on trial for. That does not happen all the time. It doesn't happen all the time in Manhattan, and it doesn't have to happen all the time in any jurisdiction in this country. And that's fine. That's fine if you want to indict somebody and go after somebody for conduct that happened in 2017. But I think where it becomes problematic for me as a lawyer is don't look me in the eye and says this is bread and butter. We do this all the time. That we're treating President Trump like we treat anybody else. That's not true. That's not true.
Here was Alvin.
The Clinton Foundation, I believe, okay, is headquartered in the same city that indicted Trump, okay, New York City. They looked at that foundation for like 2 seconds. They couldn't find anything. Books have been written about rampant criminality, okay? Clinton Cash is one book. Rampant criminality. Couldn't find anything, okay? And you have even uranium sales. Couldn't find anything. Where people are actually giving money to the foundation, and then President Obama looks the other way. He was the only one who could have vetoed it, according to Snopes. And a big percentage of America's uranium capacity goes to who? Oh, that's right, the Kremlin. Then Trump is the Kremlin operative. They get donations from the shadiest, most corrupt, devious people around the planet, the same people they call enemies. Then they accuse Trump of what they're guilty of. I mean, Hunter's laptop is even worse, very likely even worse than the Clinton Foundation or the servers, which were also, you can't transfer top secret intelligence onto servers. At least with Clinton's servers, it is impossible and highly illegal to transfer any classified data onto private servers, but very likely President Obama's intel agencies were looking at every email. Whether or not, even though there was private email, not connected to, and also FOIA requests, you can throw that out the window. Freedom of Information Act requests. She deleted 30,000 emails. We have no clue what they were. But with Biden and Hunter, you have a laptop with potential bribery and graft schemes within the laptop. And still, they don't indict the Democrat in question. And you could have had those same schemes within those emails. So it's like, I wrote about this extensively years back. Okay? Anyway, let's continue. They do not, this is not about, the rule of law should state that if a Democrat's doing the same thing or worse, then the Democrat gets indicted and convicted. But that's not the way Democrats and media roll. They'll never. Trump, when he gets his second term in office, has to behave in a reciprocal manner. How he was treated, he should treat others. That's all. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Bragg just an hour ago.
Could I ask Mr. Steinglass? Many people said the prosecution was masterful and flawless. Just want to know how you feel at this moment. Sorry.
I'll let you, man.
How do you feel?
Mr. Steinglass, I think.
Masterful and flawless. They had their key star witness literally admitted to stealing $30,000 from Trump They did not allow Bradley Smith to testify. He was the Federal Election Commission chairman who stated categorically on Mark Levin and other venues that Trump did not commit a crime. That's why the Federal Commission, the FEC, did not find Trump. They fined Clinton and the DNC. The whole thing was a political stunt, which will be overturned in the New York Appeals Court.
Some of you probably saw him speak for a little bit the other day. So he's done his job.
So the sense of what people are getting is this is a question from a reporter praising the prosecution. And then they're laughing, Todd. They're laughing. How does that make you feel?
Listen, they won today. They won today, and they're having their celebration, I'm sure, right now, and I suppose they're entitled to do that. I guess the way I would say about how it makes me feel is it kind of confirms the point in many ways, right? So the point that we've been saying, that this is not fair, this is not what this country should be doing to its political leaders, past and present, and then when you see it happen and when you see it celebrated and you hear laughter from the reporters at somebody who's just been convicted of 34 felonies, and I said this in the trial, but it's true. President Trump is an amazing man. He's president, he's running for president, and he has a public persona. He's also a husband, a father, a grandfather, and a friend to a lot of people. And so when you see that happen to him, and I was standing right next to him today, and it's heartbreaking because they're laughing at a man, at a father, at a husband, at a grandfather.
They were laughing when they cheated Bernie Sanders. Then they were crying at the Jacob Javits Center. They were laughing and laughing when they said Trump couldn't win. Then he won. It's like the Democrats live off of short-term public relation stunts and media-driven Pyrrhic victories. They don't really have a sense of vision. That's why they're focused on Trump and not inflation, the border, interest rates, the economy, foreign policy. Everything is an unmitigated catastrophe and disaster with Biden. But because they, for years, have actually committed crimes, and Republicans were saying, oh, you committed crimes, and Democrats, you can't catch us. The Democratic motto is catch me if you can, which is right now not possible. They have media is an extension now. That's why liberal journalists are by and large liberal. Okay, in terms of political philosophy, they have every major publication as an extension of the Democratic Party. Even the far left is an extension, like the socialists and communists and democratic socialists. They're an extension of the Democratic Party. They'll only vote Democrat. Ever wonder what happened to the Green Party? Well, so they can basically act with impunity at this moment. And Trump, when he regains the Oval Office, and he will, there's nothing we're on the brink of a stock market collapse. Let's get to Trump right now. When he does, he has to go ahead and behave in a reciprocal manner.
Stop you from having in from all parts, everybody. This is a case where if they can do this to me, they can do this to anyone. And these are bad people. These are, in many cases, I believe, sick people. When you look at our country, what's happening, where millions and millions of people are flowing in from all parts of the world, not just South America, from Africa, from Asia, from the Middle East. And they're coming in from jails and prisons. And they're coming in from mental institutions and insane asylums. They're coming in from all over the world into our country. And we have a president and a group of fascists that don't want to do anything about it, because they could right now, today, he could stop it. But he's not. They're destroying our country. Our country is in very bad shape. And they're very much against me saying these things. They want to raise your taxes by 4 times. They want to stop you from having cars with their ridiculous mandates that make it impossible for you to get a car or afford a car. would make it very possible for China to build all of our cars. It's a very serious problem that we have. We just went through one of many experiences where we had a conflicted judge, highly conflicted. There's never been a more conflicted judge. Now, I'm under a gag order, which nobody's ever been under. No presidential candidate's ever been under a gag order before. I'm under a gag order, nasty gag order, where I've had to pay thousands of dollars in penalties and fines and was threatened with jail. Think of it. I'm the leading candidate. I'm leading Biden by a lot, and I'm leading the Republicans to the point where that's over. So I'm the leading person for president, and I'm under a gag order by a man that can't put two sentences together, given by a court, and they are in total conjunction with the White House and the DOJ, just so you understand. This is all done by Biden and his people. Maybe his people more importantly. I don't know if Biden knows too much about it, because I don't know if he knows about anything. But he's nevertheless the president, so we have to use his name. And this is done by Washington, and nobody's ever seen anything like it. So we have a judge who's highly conflicted. You know what the confliction is. Nobody wants to write about it, and I'm not allowed to talk about it. If I do, he said, I get put in jail. So we'll play that game a little bit longer. We won't talk about it, but you're allowed to talk about it. I hope you do, because there's never been anybody so conflicted as this. As far as the trial itself, it was very unfair. We weren't allowed to use our election expert under any circumstances. You saw what happened to some of the witnesses that were on our side. They were literally crucified by this man who looks like an angel, but he's really a devil. He looks so nice and soft.
Why didn't they allow Bradley Smith? Why on earth do you think they didn't allow a Federal Election Commission chairman to testify on Trump's behalf? Oh, because the entire court would hear what Trump did was not a crime. They convict Trump while Hunter and Joe and Hillary and Bill and all the other Democrats that do, and I mean, it's all documented. Private servers, foundations, laptops, hundreds of millions of dollars going every which way, classified data floating around, and you have the Honorable James Comey, saying no reasonable prosecutor, the special counsel for Biden. Well, a court wouldn't really believe, or wouldn't. Who knows? Oh yeah, because he has cognitive issues and he was a well-meaning elderly man with memory issues, so a court wouldn't want to indict Biden or convict him. So when Democrats get caught with their hand in the cookie jar, and they're always committing crimes, we just can't find a prosecutor. Which is obviously another way of saying there's no way we're indicting criminal activity from Democrats. We're going to give them the benefit of the doubt at all costs. We'll find a record-keeping violation. We'll ignore a laptop full of graft and bribery, classified and top-secret intel on a Secretary of State servers. We'll ignore all of that, and we'll get Trump on a record-keeping violation, which wasn't even a felony because you would need a federal crime, and they wouldn't even let the Federal Election Commission chairman testify on Trump's behalf to say it wasn't a crime. So there you go. That's American politics in a nutshell.
People say, he seems like such a nice man. No, unless you saw him in action. And you saw that with a certain witness that went through hell. And when we wanted to do things, he wouldn't let us do those things. But when the government wanted something, they got everything. They got everything they wanted. It was a rigged trial. We wanted a venue change where we could have a fair trial. We didn't get it. We wanted a judge change. We wanted a judge that wasn't conflicted. And obviously he didn't do that. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We had a DA who was a failed DA, Crime is rampant in New York, violent crime. That's what he's really supposed to be looking at. Crime is rampant in New York. Yesterday in McDonald's, you had a man hitting him up with machetes, a machete.
In these Democratic-run cities, major cities in the country, people are voting for this. And then they say it's a cult to vote for Trump. No, it's not. You get a great economy with Trump and a great foreign policy. You'd have to be stupid not to vote for Trump. Conversely, the cult-like behavior is voting for crime, for inflation, for foreign policy disasters, and for a president who can't even utter two sentences together without mumbling and stumbling and creating very bizarre languages and words as he speaks, slurring his speech. Our current president, Mashed Potato Brains, slurs his speech, and then the people who vote for him say it's a cult to vote for Trump. Trump can speak! The man can speak for like 3 hours straight. And then they make this hilarious, then they make this thing up about Diaper Don, or like he wear diapers or whatever. It's like, there's no evidence of that. The only reason that they did that is because the current president, the current occupant in the Oval Office, is so obviously, some would say, impaired, that they have to make everything morally relative. They can't even look at reality, and that is the epitome of a cult. But anyway.
Whoever can imagine even a machete being wielded in a store, in a place where they're eating and he's going rampant, and Bragg is down watching a trial on what they call crimes. They're falsifying business records. That sounds so bad. To me, it sounds very bad. You know, it's only a misdemeanor, but to me, it sounds so bad. When they say falsifying business, that's a bad thing for me. I've never had that before. I'm falsifying. You know what falsifying business records is? In the first degree. They say falsifying business records. Sounds so good, right? It means that legal expense, I paid a lawyer, totally legal. I paid a lawyer a legal expense. And a bookkeeper, without any knowledge from me, correctly marked it down in the books. A very professional woman, highly respected. She testified. Marked it down in the books as a legal expense. So a legal expense, paid a lawyer, is a legal expense in the books. It's not sheetrock, construction, or any other thing. It's a legal expense. Think of that. This is what the falsification of business records were. And I said, what else are you going to call it? What else are you going to call it? Now, I would have testified. I wanted to testify. The theory is you never testify, because as soon as you testify, anybody, if it were George Washington, don't testify, because they'll get you on something that you said slightly wrong, and then they sue you for perjury. But I didn't care about that. I wanted to. But the judge allowed them to go into everything that I was ever involved in, not this case, everything that I was ever involved in, which is a first. In other words, you could go into every single thing that I ever did. Was he a bad boy here? Was he a bad boy there? And my lawyer said, what do you need to go through? And all you wanted to do is testify simply on this case. Because I would have loved to have testified. To this day, I would have liked to have testified. But you would have said something out of whack, like it was a beautiful sunny day and it was actually raining out. And I very much appreciate the big crowd of people outside. That's incredible what's happening. The level of support has been incredible. So the whole thing is legal expense was marked down as legal expense. Think of it. This is the crime that I committed, that I'm supposed to go to jail for 187 years for. When you have violent crime all over this city at levels that nobody's ever seen before, where you have businesses leaving, and businesses are leaving because of this, because heads of businesses say, man, we don't want to get involved with that. I could go through the books of any.
If you're a billionaire in New York or a millionaire in New York and you have your business, and I love New York. I love New York City, okay? But in today's New York City, if you're a millionaire, especially if you're a billionaire, you'd be an absolute fool. Even if you're a loyal Democrat, Democrats turn on each other all the time. You're not loyal enough. You're not far left enough. When I was on the left a million years ago, I just saw people turning and betraying each other all the time. Before they go after Trump and Republicans, they go after themselves, and it's nasty, really nasty. And so if you have a business in New York, yeah, sure, it's a financial, hub, a financial center, and it's a commerce and capitalism, Wall Street, but you'd be a fool because there's the potential you say something or do something wrong in the future, and then you suddenly get indicted for a record-keeping violation where they want to imprison you, where it's a misdemeanor, and then they elevate it somehow to a felony. And they don't allow, like in this case, Bradley Smith, the former FEC chairman, to defend you. So it's like the whole thing was orchestrated. It's not about, literally the antithesis of the rule of law.
Business person in the city, and I could find things that in theory, I guess, let's indict him, let's destroy his life. But I'm out there, and I don't mind being out there because I'm doing something for this country, and I'm doing something for our Constitution. It's very important, far beyond me. And this can't be allowed to happen to other presidents. It should never be allowed to happen in the future. But this is far beyond me. This is bigger than Trump. This is bigger than me. This is bigger than my presidency. And the people understand it because I just see a poll just came out, the Daily Mail. That was the first one, came out, it was done last night right after the verdict, where I'm up 6 points. 6 points from what we already were. We were leading fairly substantially. We're up 6 points in the Daily Mail poll. Now, maybe other polls come out and it says something differently. But a lot of people have predicted it because the public understands and they understand what's going on. This is a scam. There's a rigged trial. It shouldn't have been in that venue. We shouldn't have had that judge. He should have allowed us to have an election expert. We had the best expert, most respected expert, head of the Federal Elections Commission. He was all set to testify. He was waiting for 2 days. And when it was his turn, Bragg's people protested. And the judge knocked him out, said you can't testify. He actually said you can't testify for anything having to do with the trial. You can say what the federal elections is. Well, that doesn't help. Everybody knows that. But you can't testify. So essentially, he wasn't able to testify. Other people weren't able to testify. But with these people, they were able to use people salacious. By the way, and nothing ever happened. There was no anything. Nothing ever happened, and they know it. But they were as salacious as they could be, and it had nothing to do with the case, but it had to do with politics. And do you notice the timing? The timing was perfect. This case was dead. It was dropped by every agency, every governmental board. It was dropped by the highly respected Southern District. They said, no, there's no case here. It was dropped by federal election, and that's what it's about. This is about a federal election, not a state election. You're not even allowed to look at it. They took the state and the city, and they went into a federal election. They're not allowed. The people from federal election, Southern District, and Washington dropped the case. Everybody dropped the case. There was no case. Cy Vance dropped the case. And when Bragg came in, he said, this is the most ridiculous case I've ever seen. And who would have a certain person, again, gag order, who would have a certain person like this ever testify? He said, this is essentially one of the worst people I've ever seen ever to testify. He said, the craziest case I've ever seen. This is Bragg. Then when I announced I was running for president, long time later, they decided to revive this case. And they got a judge, Judge Marchand, on his income. I don't know. Want to bring the case, most of all, is Bragg. Bragg didn't want to bring it, but then he brought it, and they tried to make it a different case. They didn't say legal expense equal legal expense. Again, if I wrote down and paid a lawyer, and by the way, this was a highly qualified lawyer. Now, I'm not allowed to use his name because of the gag order, but you know, he's a sleazebag. Everybody knows that. Took me a while to find out. But he was effective. He did work. But he wasn't a fixer. He was a lawyer. You know, they like to use the word fixer. He wasn't a fixer. He was a lawyer. At the time, he was a fully accredited lawyer. Now, do
you know how many fixers the Democrats have? That's all they have is lawyers. The Democratic Party is fueled by lawyers that do everything from contest results, which is what they did in 2016, to pushing indictments, prosecutors pushing indictments of Trump, to preventing people from being able to be on ballots, like you saw in the Colorado Supreme Court case, unanimous decision. So they will have had two major decisions overruled and reversed and overturned. The Colorado case was overturned, like I said, it would be overturned. You'll have immunity, a huge Supreme Court victory for Trump on immunity, huge. Then you'll have the Court of Appeals in New York overturn and reverse this verdict. He will no longer be a convicted felon, which he's not really even a convicted felon now. You can say that if you're a Democrat, he's a convicted felon. Yeah, in New York, where Tammany Hall and Democrats literally ran on trying to convict Trump. Imagine, you know how indignant they were, and they were, mortified and indignant when Trump said lock up President Obama's Secretary of State. They would have said the same thing that Trump is saying. However, in their case, they actually did commit crimes, so it wouldn't really bear weight. But they would say the same thing. Trump's a despot. Oh, my God, they would call him a despot, a totalitarian. Oh, he's going after his political rivals. Oh, my God. But with them, it's about the rule of law. Yeah, right.
He got into trouble not because of me. He got into trouble because he made outside deals, and he had something to do with taxi cabs and medallions, and he borrowed money. And that's why he went. And then he pled to three election violations. And as soon as I saw that, I said, I wonder why he did that. He pled. He took a deal. Now, he took a deal because he wanted to get off. In other words, I'll take a plea deal and I want to get off. And he wanted to make a deal with the Southern District. And they wrote the worst report I think I've ever seen on any human being, other than the report that was written on James Comey by the Inspector General, a very great Inspector General, actually, wrote a report that was so bad. This one was possibly worse. The Southern District, the judge didn't let us use it. He said, it's hearsay. I said, it's not hearsay. Wouldn't let us use it. This is about the man. But he got in trouble for a very simple reason, because he was involved with borrowing a lot of money, and he did something with the banks. I don't know if it's defrauded the banks, but something happened. You guys know what it is. And then in addition to that, he gave up on three things where he wasn't guilty. In fact, they were going to testify in that. The head of the FEC, the Brad Smith, the election expert, number one rated in the country, was going to testify. He took a plea on three things. He just added them in because that gave him more bargaining power with respect to me. But the three things that he pled on, having to do with the election and having to do essentially a little bit with me, they weren't crimes. They weren't crimes. Nor is paying money under an NDA. So we have an NDA, non-disclosure agreement. It's a big deal, a non-disclosure agreement. Totally honorable, totally good, totally accepted. Everybody has them. Every company has non-disclosure agreements. But the press called it slush fund and all sorts of other things. Hush money, hush money. It's not hush money. It's called a non-disclosure agreement. And most of the people in this room have a non-disclosure agreement with their company. It's a disgrace. So it's not hush money. It's a non-disclosure agreement, totally legal, totally common. Everyone has it. And what happened is he signed a non-disclosure agreement with this person, I guess other people, but it's totally honest. You're allowed to make the payment. You don't have to make it. You can make it any way you want. It's a non-disclosure agreement. And he signed that. And there was nothing wrong with signing it. And This should have been a non-case. And everybody said it was a non-case, including Bragg. Bragg said, until I ran for office. And then they saw the polls. I was leading the Republicans. I was leading the Democrats. I was leading everybody. And all of a sudden, they brought it back. It's a very sad thing that's happening in our country. And it's a thing that I'm honored. In a way, I'm honored. It's not that it's pleasant. It's very bad for family. It's very bad for friends and businesses. But I'm honored to be involved in it because somebody has to do it. And I might as well keep going and be the one. But I'm very honored to be involved because we're fighting for our Constitution. The money that was paid legally. There was nothing illegal. In fact, the lawyer in creating the NDA, because at that time he was a fully accredited lawyer. He wasn't a fixer. I never thought of him as a fixer. The media called him a fixer.
The media created this world that doesn't exist. Michael Cohen wasn't a fixer. There wasn't an age of Trump. The age of Trump. Oh, was there an age of Obama? Was there an age of Bush? The age of Clinton? Oh, don't bring my name up. I can't do it right now. That was the age of Clinton. We have a lot of fun in the Oval Office. The age of Clinton? The age of... No, it was the age of Trump. The era of Trump. Then they say he'll never leave. Honestly, at this point, it would be good for the country if he stayed like FDR 3-4 terms. But he's going to leave. The man left. He's not anywhere near D.C. now. He hasn't been anywhere near D.C. For 3 years. He's not on the White House lawn waiting to get back in. They didn't have to physically remove him. So when Robert De Niro says I will never leave, it's like, no, he'll leave. He left. He left. 4 years from now, he'll win in November 5th, and then he'll eventually leave. You think he wants to be president forever? He wants to deal with all this mishigas and nonsense? I don't think so.
Or the prosecutors called him a fixer. He was a lawyer, and he was fairly good. Later on, I didn't like what he did. For instance, I didn't like that when I became president, he went around and made deals with companies. When I heard that, he was gone. He was gone. And he had payments coming to him, and a lot of this involved things that are very simple. There was nothing wrong. This was standard stuff, all standard stuff. Everything involved was standard. There was no crime here. In fact, I just watched a couple of the reports. You watched Jonathan Turley, Andy McCarthy, Greg Jarrett. You look at all of these people, Mark Levin.
Let's listen to Jonathan Turley really quickly. And he says it's going to be overturned.
All right, Judge, I want to bring in Professor Jonathan Turley, who has been in the courtroom today. So you're fresh out of there. Can you give us any of the flavor? Because when we thought that the court was going to break for the day, it seems like President Trump and his team seemed relaxed, that he was smiling. Maybe they thought, okay, this jury is still struggling. They're going to leave tonight not having made a decision. Then we get word that verdict is coming in. What can you tell us about the mood inside the courthouse?
It was one of the most bizarre moments I've had in a courtroom, and I was just observing. The judge had just said that the jury could not reach a decision and that we would be dismissed for the day. Some reporters actually gathered their stuff and was starting to leave. And then the judge came and basically said, my mistake, we just got a note saying there's a verdict. Throughout this time, you could feel the building pressure in that courtroom. The one person that didn't seem to register it was the former president. He had been chatting with counsel. He didn't show any emotion at all as this mantra of guilty verdicts was read. And there was a great, I think that this is one of those things that is really embodies the entire Trump era. There were people who clearly were thrilled by the result, and there were people that will be very sad by it. I was saddened to watch it. I disagree with this verdict.
For the Supreme Court decision on immunity, which could come as before context.
In the rule of law, it's what defines us. Many people feel that this case really embodied the antithesis of that. But as a country as a whole, we have a system in on both sides. They didn't like the extremes of the Trump team in terms of the sweeping immunity, but they also didn't like the Court of Appeals approach. They felt that it gave too little recognition of the needs of the office. So they could end up sending this back for further evidence and for determinations by the trial court. It seems unlikely that the judge will be able to get that done before the election. Florida does not appear to be heading towards a trial before the election.
And that's the federal Mar-a-Lago documents case.
Yes, and as someone like Andy and others who have dealt with weaponization of the legal system, and so the result won't come as a surprise. For some, adding the title of a convicted felon could affect their votes. For others, it could affect it the other way. For others, they are repelled by what they see out of New York. I must tell you, the reason I was sad in there was not for the former president. It was for the New York legal system. I've written, as many of us have, that this is a deeply flawed case. It's wrong. And this is a great legal system. I'm not a New York bar member. I'm not a D.C. But I have huge amount of respect for this system. It has helped define the law in this country. Legal history was made here on this block. I'm looking at two courthouses where legendary cases were heard and handed down. It's part of our DNA as lawyers. So for many of us, it is a sad moment because we were hoping this jury might redeem a bit of that integrity. It did not. I'm not blaming the jurors. They got instructions that made conviction very likely here. I was one, as opposed to my good friend Andy here, who believed he'd get a verdict today and that it would be a conviction. I was one holding out for a possible hung jury because I believe this jury would see through this. But I'm not too sure you can blame them when you look at the instructions. When you allow a jury to potentially go 4-4-4 and disagree on what happened as to what crime was being concealed here, it makes it pretty hard to acquit.
Jonathan, I want to ask you too a little bit about the flavor inside, because you commented yesterday that there were the New York.
When I told Trump about this,
you feel this may reflect.
They were unanimous that some crime was being committed on that secondary crime, but it's apparently between the jurors and God as to what that crime was, unless there's going to be some release of a jury form. We haven't seen that jury form, so we don't know.
So they don't know what crime actually Trump committed. And we don't know how the jury voted. Okay, you're supposed to have a unanimous vote. You're not supposed to, there's probably a technicality where the court allowed this to take place just to convict Trump. Do you think they would do this with any Democrat? You think Democrats who run New York would do this? And by the way, a Democratic donor who, let's say, happened to have real estate in the ocean, we'll leave it at that. They couldn't get a grand jury to convict, to indict him. For years, they couldn't get a grand jury to indict him. Okay, you have music people who shall remain nameless, musical artists, billionaires, or hundreds of millions of dollars. They don't have a grand jury to indict them. But with Trump, oh my God, the end of the world. And everyone sees right through this. Everyone sees right through this. So I'm trying to get to the part where Jonathan Turley says it's going to be overturned.
When you were inside that we would, or that there was a special verdict form?
No, and so we were all hoping that there might be a form that might bring clarity on that issue. But no, I think that in the end, you're going to have a reversal. I'm fairly confident of that. Now, in the New York appellate system, they have ruled for Trump. There are very good lawyers in the New York system and credible people who want this system to work the way it's designed. I got to tell you, I am eternally an optimist. I was an optimist about a hung jury, and I'm an optimist now about the appellate judges. I think at some point, people will step forward and say, enough. Hating this man is not enough. To forget the lack of the evidence. And once again, I do not blame this jury. They were given instructions that made it very easy to convict.
So he did mention, there was another part, but he mentions he has confidence it'll be overturned. It will be overturned on appeal. This isn't rocket science. Of course it's going to be overturned on appeal. Look, I remember 2016 very, very well. I'm still living within the 2016 matrix, okay? They think that they've gotten a huge victory. It was not a victory. It wasn't even a political victory. When Trump said that Clinton should be locked up or indicted, it's because there were private servers with top secret intelligence on them for 4 years. It's highly illegal. You can't even transfer. You can't find a way to migrate or transfer or copy classified or top secret intelligence from a government DOD DOD or Pentagon server to a private server. It's impossible to do from a cybersecurity perspective. Very illegal. Definitely numerous crimes there by likely numerous people. No indictment. Biden, Hunter, the laptop, according to the New York Post, literally has requests for influence peddling. Okay, so no indictment there. 50 intel officials come out of nowhere to protect the Bidens. Everyone knows the system is not fair. And Democrats routinely talk about how corrupt the system is, but only for political philosophy. Or, for example, when Clinton was being investigated, her campaign was saying, oh, it was the intel agencies, it's not them. Anyway, the point is, she deleted 30,000 emails. Hunter had very likely bribery and graft schemes, according to the New York Post, Daily Mail, Federalist, anyone who paid attention. Yet they don't get indicted. Trump gets indicted for a record-keeping violation. So there you go. Anyway, hit subscribe to this channel. I'll be back tomorrow, everybody. I'll be doing a lot more work starting tomorrow, June 1st. Hit subscribe. Thanks, everybody. God bless. To my super chat, Paul, everyone here, Truffles, Paul Bartlett, Falvi, everyone here, thank you so very, very, very much, Paul Bartlett and Falvi and everybody here. Thank you very, very much. Truffles, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Hit subscribe. I'll see you tomorrow. Every day is a countdown to November, people. Every single day is a countdown.